guess if this thing comes up short, he can field it and run it out. All right, here we go. 56-yarder. Does not have the leg. And Chris Davis takes it to the back of the end zone. He'll run it out to the 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game. Auburn's going to win the football game. He ran the missed field goal back. He ran it back 109 yards. They're not going to keep him off the field tonight. Holy cow.
Welcome to SEC Sports Talk with John McCann. We had a really boring weekend of college football, at least in the SEC, but it's rivalry week coming up, and we've got an exciting show for you. If you couldn't tell, that was the Auburn-Alabama game, the Iron Bowl from last year, and that was the last play of the game. I think we all know how that turned out. Bama and Auburn played some cupcakes this weekend. Arkansas took it to Ole Miss, 30-0 in Fayetteville. And we also have Max Howell. Used to be the host for the fourth quarter show on 97.3 The Zone.
Yeah, he used to do Sports Talk in Atlanta. He's still actually
He's everywhere. Yeah. He's all over the place.
He does a Yahoo Game of the Week still.
Yeah, I mean...
He's an old college football guy. He is, if you want to go back old school, he is Deion Sanders' old DB coach.
Yes, he is.
In his high school, where he was a head coach, guess who his running back was?
Mr. Smith.
That is correct. Mr. Emmitt Smith.
Mr. Emmitt Smith. There's a lot of Smiths out there, by the way, in case you didn't know. He will be on with us later in about 15 minutes. So, we're here at Moe's, by the way, tonight. Moe's Original Barbecue in Vestavia Hills, Alabama. Alabama, Crimson Tide. How did they play in prep for the Iron Bowl? They didn't play badly. I mean, honestly, 48-14 over Western Carolina. I mean, what more can you ask for? The only problem was they had a few injuries, but overall they took care of business. Had 600 yards of offense again at home. That's just been an ongoing theme for them all year. They've just been great at home. They really have. And Auburn's coming in to Tuscaloosa, so that's going to be a really tough game for Auburn. Sims, Blake Sims, there have been a lot of naysayers about him all year long, but he's just time and time again, in my mind, he has proved that he's a very good quarterback. Is he the greatest quarterback in Alabama history? Probably not, but he's done everything he's been asked to do. Everything. I think he's pretty close to a complete quarterback. Let's not forget, last weekend when they played Mississippi State, number one team in the nation at the time, Blake Sims won that game with his feet. He kept a huge drive alive at the end of the game, got 2 or 3 first downs on 3rd and 10 with his feet. Now, the question is, how do these injuries affect Bama going into next week? Amari Cooper, he got hurt. He'll be back. Hurt his, knee? He'll be back. Nose tackle, Ashawn Robinson. Left tackle, Cam Robinson. Fullback, Justin Fowler. Wide receiver, Ardarius Stewart. And tight end, Brian Vogler. All suffered injuries. And this is one of those games you just kind of want to get through, and you want to come out unscathed. It's kind of like, why do we have to play these guys? It's Western Carolina, FCS team. But it can affect you. And so Vogler and Stewart, they're the most questionable, at least according to Saban. Not what you wanted, but it could have been a lot worse. Now, Auburn's beat up too. The big question is Duke Williams, their wide receiver. He's been their best receiver all year. He got hurt in the A&M game. And ever since then, Nick Marshall hasn't really had a target to go to. Sammy Epps has been their top target, but he's had 283 yards passing in the last 2 games. So that includes Samford and Georgia. How did Auburn play against Samford this weekend? Samford, another FCS team, right here in the hometown of Birmingham. Really did not play well. Unimpressive. They won the game 31-7, and that's fine. That's great. But you know what? Didn't look like a team that was ready to play in the Iron Bowl next week, that's for sure. It was a really lame effort. They didn't even score in the first quarter. They got down in the second quarter 7-0. Then they got hot, as expected. But honestly, Auburn's going to have to play a lot better next week if they want to have a shot at winning the Iron Bowl. They've got to go to Tuscaloosa. It's a revenge game for Alabama. And you know what? Alabama's going to be favored by 10 points. Alabama's got a national championship on the line. Auburn playing for a good bowl game.
Well, I think at this point, though, Alabama depended on a couple of guys that are going to be out. Vogler, best blocking tight end they've got, helps with the running game. And our Darius Stewart has really become an integral part of their offense in the last few weeks. They kind of view him as a Kenyon Drake type player. They can put him all over the field. So it's going to be imperative for Alabama to find somebody to plug in. You notice they played a ton of freshmen, pulled some red shirts off potentially. Tony Brown on the defensive side. For Alabama, the key is not to have that letdown. I think both teams are caught looking ahead to Tuscaloosa. Alabama looking to the future. Auburn just looking, 90 miles across state going, we have this game coming up. So both teams looked flat. I think for Alabama, they got a dress rehearsal for what to expect from Nick Marshall, in quarterback from Western Carolina, who gave them a lot of fits.
Well, and let's not forget, I said that Samford gave Auburn they held Auburn in the first quarter. Alabama was also at, 17-14 in the second quarter, so it was pretty close. Western Carolina moved the ball. If you look at the stats here, passing 221 yards for Western Carolina. Rushing yards, though, maybe they didn't move the ball as well as I thought. -8 yards. Alabama had 275 yards rushing, 337 yards passing, 612 yards of offense. So total yards for Western Carolina was 213. They moved the ball well early in the game. Alabama got it together, and Nick Saban said it. They started off flat. They came in. They weren't really ready. Warm-ups, they kind of weren't really tuned in. As the game went along, they got it together. And, here's the thing. It's pretty obvious they have scheduled these two games, or these two teams have scheduled puff cakes before the Iron Bowl. They don't want an emotional game going into the Iron Bowl. They just don't, right? I mean, why would you want to put yourself through Georgia before you have to go and play? It's an emotional letdown, easily. So they know what they're doing here.
Yeah, you've either got to play idle or a cupcake. I mean, and it does a couple of things. One, it's a cash cow for the universities, but the other, it lets these younger guys get in here. That was some invaluable reps that Alabama and Auburn were able to get on both sides of the ball. Alabama pulled a few red shirts off, but look at the exposure Coker got. He got himself a whole half, and he's one of those guys that looks like he has to get into a rhythm, and he's not really at game speed. I don't know if you watched any of the game. He still looks about a half a step behind on his reads and progressions. So it's going to be imperative for him to get more experience moving forward, because who's Alabama's quarterback going to be? That's going to be an intriguing question for next year.
I mean, I think it'll be Coker. I think there's no doubt about that. And he'll have one more year. Now, this is interesting looking at Auburn's stats. 386 yards of total offense against Samford. Now, this is Auburn's offense that everybody's been praising all year. Oh, this is the best offense. Gus Malzahn, And yet, guess what? Against the FCS team, and they're not pulling every trick out of the book. They're not doing Statue of Liberties. But, again, this is Samford, and you should get at least 500 yards. I mean, come on. 31-7. That's a nice win over an SEC school. I'll give you that. Not over an FCS team. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are here at Moe's Original Barbecue, having a good time, talking about the Iron Bowl. It's what all you Bama people, Alabama people, you Auburn people, it's all you care about is the Iron Bowl. Don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to us.
Yeah, everybody seems to be all fired up. And speaking of fired up, they've got the smokers fired up at Moe's Original Barbecue. He's back in the kitchen. They've got 128 turkeys that are being smoked as we speak.
Really?
And they've got 100 already in the smoking fridge. So if you want to get some smoked turkey, you need to head down to Moe's. Now, they cannot do whole turkeys anymore, but they can do turkey by the pound.
Really? Okay.
Breast. So you're come in, it's $13 a pound. You've got until really Wednesday to get your orders in. And we're, again, at the Moe's Vestavia location, but they've got 4 convenient locations serving Birmingham. You've got the Trussville location, you have the Lakeview District area, and the Hoover location over by the Galleria. So don't forget to stop by Moe's Original Barbecue, a Southern soul food revival. And if you need a smoked turkey, can't think of a better place to go. Get all your trimmings and fixings from Moe's Original Barbecue.
All right, well, let's do our SEC scores of the week. Alabama took down Western Carolina. Actually, it's just West Carolina. Took them down 48-14. Tennessee hosted Missouri in Knoxville. Missouri comes out on top 29-21 in a big victory for them. All they have to do is beat Arkansas next week at home, and they are the Eastern Division champions. Florida, in Will Muschamp's first game, his last game at home as a Florida Gator, in his first game after being let go, they beat Eastern Kentucky 52-3. Georgia takes down Charleston Southern 55-9 at home. Why am I reading these? I mean, these are just terrible games, honestly, all of them. Absolutely awful. South Carolina takes down South Alabama 37-12 at home. Arkansas pulls off the upset and destroys Ole Miss 30-0 in Fayetteville. Auburn hosts Samford, unimpressively wins, but a win's a win, right? 31-7 over the Samford Bulldogs. And Mississippi State hosted the Vanderbilt Commodores at home. They won convincingly 51-0. And Mississippi State, ranked number 4 in the nation, still has a shot to get into the college football playoffs if things go their way. Those are your SEC scores of the week. Tonight we have Max Howell joining us. He is a legend in the sports radio world in the Southeast. And he was also on a recent radio show called The Fourth Quarter in Birmingham. And he also does a bunch of other stuff like owning businesses and being successful, and he's all over the place. So anyway, here he is. All right, Max, well, thank you for being on the show. Max, let me ask you, you own a business called Outpost South. Tell me a little bit about that.
Basically, John, it's probably a sophisticated junk business. Is what it is. A lot of without today's society, with the baby boomers getting to the age that they are, a lot of the younger kids, their kids and their grandkids, don't want the physical possessions that a lot of these families have accumulated through the years. They don't like the style of furniture. They don't like the antiques and that kind of that style in today's market. And I found a niche where doing estate sales or liquidation sales, whether it be a small business or a nice estate from a large family that's accumulated a great deal of wealth there, that I've been able to step in and help liquidate, and I charge just a small commission for doing it. And I've got as much work as I want to do. Let's put it this way. I tell people all the time that I'm in my third career. I coached for 30 years. I did radio and TV for 20, and now I'm having fun. I really had to work for a living for a long time, but I'm doing very, very well with it. I'm located just out of Tupelo, Mississippi. I do sales everywhere from Atlanta to the coast and over to Memphis and throughout the Southeast. And certainly it's worked out very well for me.
So you coached at Florida State and Ole Miss, is that right?
Florida State, Ole Miss. I coached at Troy twice. I coached the first national championship team there. I had 3 high school jobs. The most notable was Emmett Smith. It's in the Escambia High School program in the late 80s, where we had 19 Division I prospects on one high school team. We were number 1 in the nation in high school that year. USA Today's enormous number 1. Again, we had great talent. University of Florida took 7 kids off that one high school team to tell you how good it was.
Wow.
But we could have beaten most small teams. Our offensive line was 300 pounds. Our wide receivers were 6'4", ran a 4.5. We had and it was just the crown piece of the talent. I'll tell you how good we were, John. We played 15 ball games that year. We punted less than 10 times, and our punter got a scholarship to Florida. How about that?
Wow. So now, what years did you coach at Ole Miss and Florida State?
Florida State, I was at Florida State 86, 87, 88. I was at Ole Miss 89, 90, 91.
So you were under Billy Brewer?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Well, speaking of Ole Miss, what in the world happened this Saturday in Fayetteville against Arkansas?
Well, I think what's happened, I certainly there were some problems on the offensive side with Ole Miss. Certainly, with Bo Wallace going down, that certainly hurt. But I think it was a perfect storm for Arkansas. They kept getting better and better, John, week after week. You watch the LSU game the week before. That 17 to nothing was no indication of how bad Arkansas beat LSU. They beat them up bad physically. You got to remember, they're a Big Ten oriented school. They run the football a lot. Brandon Allen's a better than average quarterback. I don't think he's had an opportunity to throw the ball very much because Coach Belimo was really interested in just running the football with the college kid and the Williams kid, and they did well. But it rained. The weather was nasty. Ole Miss's lack of a running game on offense, I think, hindered the effectiveness of Bo Wallace. And then, of course, he turned his ankle there, and I think certainly that limited the offensive play calling even more so.
Well, on the other side, where do you think this Arkansas team is headed next year?
Well, hey, look, I think he said last night after the game, I watched his post game, and I think they got 18 returners. I mean, I'm telling you, if this is the case, somebody better take a hard look at them in the West next year.
Yeah.
Of course, they got one more game. They got to go to Columbia, Missouri to finish out. I watched the Missouri-Tennessee game last night. And Missouri's a team, excuse me, that that kind of flies under the radar for us down here that's coming to the SEC for a long time. We don't pay a lot of attention. We don't get a lot of information. But they got a pretty good football team. And I think Gary Pinkel's done a good job with them. They probably hadn't played anybody as physical as Arkansas. I'll be really interested to see how that ball game. Missouri's got to win that game though. If they get to, if they win the East, to get a chance to go and probably play Alabama.
What does this Arkansas loss do to Ole Miss as they prepare for the Egg Bowl?
Well, here's the thing that bothers me about Ole Miss and the Egg Bowl now, because what Ole Miss saw against Arkansas defensively, they would say almost the same thing, and probably a little bit better talent at Mississippi State for the Egg Bowl. I think, again, if Bo Wallace can move his ankle, if they can tape him up enough and he can move on that ankle and throw the football, they'll certainly stand a much better chance. I don't think they can run the ball. Probably on Mississippi State. Mississippi State's front four is as good as they're going to see all year long, and I think at least two of those guys on the front four from Mississippi State is going to be in the NFL next year. So I think Ole Miss will have to work. The good thing, they got to play them in Oxford. That's a hard place to play for people coming in, and of course that's a rivalry game. Now, before Wallace went down, that line favored Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss would have been favored had they played yesterday. Ole Miss
I think it was a 3-point favorite.
Right, there's about 3 points. Yeah, home field advantage, home field advantage for 3 points usually is what happens. So Now, with him going down, I can't wait till the lines come out later today or tomorrow and just see how much has changed, if any.
We are at Moe's Original Barbecue. We will take a break and come back to Max in just a minute. Max Howell. Welcome back to the show. We're here at Moe's Original Barbecue in Vestavia Hills, Alabama. Let's get back to Max Howell. Max Howell here with us. Max, if Mississippi State does win the Egg Bowl, and I'm cringing right now just saying that, but if they win and Alabama wins out, obviously Alabama gets the SEC West Championship. What are Mississippi State's chances of getting into the playoff?
See, I think I'm going to be perfectly honest. The only way I think they get in is for Georgia to beat, if they play Georgia or Missouri, for them to beat Alabama. First of all, John, I don't think that the committee takes a two-loss team. I don't care if they did win the conference. I don't think they'll do it. So I think that would be a shot if Mississippi State wins out. They'd have one loss, and then the champion would have two losses. That's one. But I'm going to tell you, you watch the committee on Tuesday night when the polls come out, they are really pushing Ohio State. Ohio State struggled yesterday. They finally came back against Indiana and won it pretty big. But remember, Ohio State will have one more game than Mississippi State will also. And they kind of set the precedent last week by talking about the body of work when they talked about Baylor and TCU not playing as many games at that time. And they really penalized them for it. So I think that trend is already set. Ohio State, if they win out all the way, Mississippi State, even if they win out, Ohio State would be, would they be 13? Let's see, 12, yeah, they'd be 12-1 with 12 wins if they went out, as opposed to Mississippi State with 11.
Well, and Ohio State has to win that championship, and I think they would play Wisconsin. Is that right?
They would play Wisconsin, yes.
That's no gimme.
That is no gimme. No, I agree with you. I think they have to win out. But then if they don't win out, Mississippi State, if Alabama loses in the championship game, Mississippi State will go, I think, represent the SEC.
No doubt about that. I would agree with that. Let's talk about another team that is in the Final Four right now, or the Final Four of the college football playoff, and that is Florida State.
Yep.
What do you think Florida's chances are of knocking off Florida State in Will Muschamp's last game?
I think they're going to be highly motivated. I think they showed that yesterday. Their opponent yesterday was, kind of a directional school and not with a lot of talent. But I think they had a better attitude about it. The thing that's amazed me, John, with that Florida team is how well they played against Georgia and how poorly they played against Vanderbilt and others, South Carolina and other teams. They just, they didn't perform very well against Georgia. Georgia couldn't stop them at all. Now, if they play like that against FSU, they'll beat FSU. I'm convinced. FSU is not a very physical team. They're way more finesse. They've had to come from behind at least 4 or 5 times this year. They win that one Saturday with a field goal with 15, 20 seconds left on the clock. I think Florida State's got some major problems. And I'm going to give them credit. They're still winning, and you can't take that away. They're all winning. But I think if there's any way that the committee could get them down to number 4, they would. And I think that was what was in Dan Mullen's mind yesterday when they kept running the ball against Vanderbilt. I think he thought, well, if we put up 50 points on them, and Florida State barely won, we may go to the third slot. So I don't know whether they'll do that or not. But I think by far Florida State's probably the weakest team in the top 4 right now.
Well, there's no doubt they're beating teams that are mediocre, and they're barely beating them. I mean, it's ridiculous. Let me ask you about this. You saw it. Jameis Winston shoved one of the officials out of the way as he was trying to get under center. Do you think he should have been ejected for that?
I think in most places they would have been. You can't touch one of those guys. I mean, I think maybe in all the years that I was on the sideline, I may have seen that one time, and he was immediately ejected. And I think, but see, there's some special compensation that that he's getting in the way of excuses. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what the mindset is. But I will say this from people I know that work inside on that program, they'll be so happy when he's going to the NFL.
Oh, I can't
tell you how
imagine.
happy they'll be.
Oh, I know. Do you think there's a possible suspension for that?
I don't know. See, remember all the other stuff that went on. Jimbo never did step up. The half game suspension he got in mid-season was brought on by the college president and the athletic director. Jimbo Fisher did not issue that suspension. So I'll go so far and say this: if it comes, it'll come from somebody other than Jimbo Fisher, unless he's directed to do that. They've got a major problem there, and it's an image problem, and I think it certainly hurt Jimbo Fisher's image as well as a head football coach.
Legendary Max Howell on with us right now. Let me ask you about this Auburn team. You know where we're going. We're going to the Iron Bowl. Where is this Auburn team right now, though, and are they just completely collapsing? They didn't play well yesterday against FCS opponent Sanford.
They really didn't. I don't know. It's something, again, the chemistry inside. I don't know it's hard to tell from a fan watching from the outside in until you're inside and know what. But they're not performing as well as they have. And who knows why. It could be as little as a couple of the players have disagreements or they aren't agreeing with the assistant coaches. I don't know what it is, but they're not performing. The end result is what happens on Saturday. All the other stuff that goes on, John, goes on from Sunday afternoon to Friday. But when you tee it up and play on Saturday, if that problem, whatever it was created during the week, has not been solved by then you see the end result. You see it's a performance problem. They're just not doing well. The defense, I saw some critical errors in the secondary against Georgia when Auburn played Georgia. I saw some, I don't know what the coverages were. And if I hadn't coached at that level and coached that position, I might not have paid attention. I pay attention to how the corners line up. I pay attention to where the safeties go. And when you keep getting beat deep, that means you got somebody out of position. And I saw that 2 or 3 times at Auburn. And so I don't. Ellis Johnson has had a good resume there, but I'll tell you, he's got some problems in the performance of his kids on the field right now.
Well, let's talk about Alabama for a second. They got out with a win yesterday against Western Carolina, and that's fine. But they had some injuries too, and I think Amari Cooper is going to be okay. But what do you make of these other injuries? And does this affect them against Auburn?
Yeah, that's part of the game. We all know that. Here's what I got to say about the Alabama staff. For whatever reason, when things start to go awry, and I know they came away with a loss to Ole Miss. They had a year loss. They should have lost to Arkansas. This is not the same Alabama team that we've seen in the past. The talent, once again, is not performing at the top level every week. I don't know where, again, that's a communication problem within the staff or what, but something's not taking place right. But, again, they're playing well enough to win week in and week out. I think it's going to be another one of those ball games that I think the line is at 7.5 or maybe 8 right now. It may go to 9 before Saturday. But I will say that Alabama stands a good chance to win that one in Tuscaloosa. If they were playing in Auburn, I called that game for Yahoo Sports last year, and I think everybody in the stadium was amazed at the way it happened. But the fact is that Auburn was coming back, and the score was tied, and they'd have gone to overtime. I'm not really sure Auburn wouldn't have won it anyway. But I think Alabama's playing better than Auburn is right now.
What type of chance does Auburn have to win that game?
Well, the defense, they got to figure out a way to stop Alabama's offense. That's one thing Lane Kiffin's been able to do is readjust, and don't ever mistake that for being Nick Saban's offense. That's Lane Kiffin's offense. I think last year the 2 losses that Alabama had with Auburn and Oklahoma to end, I really do think Coach Saban really was looking for something different. And Kiffin was available, and he brought him in, and I think he's done a good job. I was definitely not in favor of that from just a personal opinion standpoint. I didn't think it would work with Coach Saban being the authoritarian that he is. I didn't think he'd give him that much leeway, but he has. He's done that, and it's worked for him. Look, he's made a quarterback out of Blake Sims. Blake
There's
Sims
no
came
doubt.
there, John, is a running back. He was a running back out of high school. And signed. I talked to his high school coach last week, and he actually signed at Alabama as a running back. And they converted him, and you know the story. I mean, he was a backup to McEachin and played very little, and we know why. Had an awful spring, and they went and found the Coker kid at FSU. Of course, he got a few snaps yesterday, but Sims is just taking over. So I think Auburn's got to find a way. Auburn's deficiency is in the secondary. And when they got people like Amari Cooper that can run and catch, that could present problems for them.
You know, I didn't plan to ask this, but I'm guessing you saw that little skirmish between Lane Kiffin and Nick Saban yesterday. What was that all about?
It's the way Saban it's the way Lane Kiffin calls the plays. Not getting them in on time. If you go back and check the 2 or 3 ball games, John, where they would even either call a timeout, call a play, and 12 guys would break the huddle. That's a penalty. They would call the play, send them out there, then have a delay a game before the snap. That's communication thing, and I think that's where and that kind of stuff. See, that's organizational stuff. Coach Saban cannot stand that. I mean, that's the least of his problems in his mind that you should have to deal with. And he has to deal with it every week. Every week his problems that way.
Do you have Alabama winning the Iron Bowl?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes, I do. I have Alabama, Georgia playing. I got Alabama, Georgia playing for the SEC championship, and I think that'll be a better. I think that'll be a better challenge for Alabama than Missouri. I don't think Missouri will present a challenge for Alabama.
No, I don't either. I really don't either. Honestly, I think Missouri. I want to respect them more than I do, but it feels like things have just kind of fallen in place for them, and I think Georgia's a way better team than Missouri is.
Yeah. I think the Georgia's playing well. The Chum kid has stepped out. Remember, he was the number 4 running back, John, on that depth chart. The other 3 above him now have been hurt. And of course, I don't see how you replace him. And he's a pure freshman. The guy's tough and strong enough to run inside. He's got deceptive speed to run outside. Carried the ball 11 times, just take 113 yards. In 2 touchdowns. I mean, he's really an unbelievable guy. And their defense, I think Jeremy Pruitt's improved their defense in Georgia since last year. I think Alabama wins that, but I think that's going to be a tough ball game for them.
Max Howell, everybody, the legend. Thank you very much, Max, for coming on.
John, thank you. Anytime, I'll be happy to do it.
All right. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. We just had Max Howell on, and let's talk about Ole Miss Arkansas this week. And Max coached at Ole Miss under Billy Brewer in the early 90s. He would not be pleased, and I don't think he was very pleased with the way Ole Miss played this weekend. It looked awful. No way around it. They didn't get off the bus. They didn't even get off the. I'm not sure they got on the plane to go to Fayetteville. I mean. Honestly. And, Arkansas won this game 30-0. And, I predicted last week Ole Miss would win 21-17. That was a week ago.
But you didn't pick the real bad Bo Wallace to make the appearance, though.
Well, here's what happened. The day of the game, I saw it was going to rain. The day before the game, I saw it was going to rain as well. But when I saw that it was going to be raining in Fayetteville, it was bad news for Ole Miss all the way. Ole Miss cannot run the ball. They especially can't run it up the middle. They're a passing team, and when Bo Wallace is on, he's on. But that rain really hurts. Arkansas is a running team, and they are a power team. That's what they love. That's what the linemen love. Get in the trenches, run it down your throat, raining really hard. That's exactly what they want. Everything favored Arkansas. Ole Miss had been off a week. And honestly, Ole Miss outgained them 316-311. But 6 turnovers. You can't turn the ball over 6 times. Bo Wallace throws 2 interceptions, fumbles the ball twice. Both of those interceptions were in the end zone. okay? One of them gets returned for a pick six, 99 yards. Well, it was either 99 or 100. I don't know what they actually – I think they were trying to figure out what in the world happened there. But Bo Wallace was driving down the field. It wasn't like they couldn't move the ball. But one thing they could not do is they could not run the ball. They have to pass. But Bo Wallace was thrown off his back foot. His ankle was injured. I'm not trying to make excuses for Ole Miss. They did not show up to play. And Arkansas on the other side is a much better team. They have improved all year long. They should have beaten A&M. They had them up 2 touchdowns with less than 10 minutes to go in the game. They blew it because they just didn't know how to win. They had Alabama beat. They lost 14-13. Missed PAT, fumbled the ball in the end zone. In Alabama's end zone, they should have scored. So, should have won that game. And finally, they beat LSU. Oh, by the way, should have beaten Mississippi State too. Up 10-0 in that game, lost 17-10 in Starkville. You knew the LSU win was coming. They were overdue, and it was going to happen. Personally, I was hoping they'd get that first win out of their system, but they just decided to keep on winning.
Well, that goes back to a bigger picture. Then what does that say really about the SEC overall? If you want to look at strength of schedule and teams, LSU is not the team everybody thought they were. Auburn, really not quite the same team, especially without their go-to receiver, Duke Williams. But you look overall, the SEC is not quite as sexy as people thought.
Well, here's the thing. 8 straight quarters for Arkansas, not giving up a single point. Every team in the West, by the way, is bowl eligible. But Arkansas is on a roll, and guess what? Next year, I would look out for them. I'm picking Tennessee to win the East, a team that was on the rise over there. Yeah, I'm picking them to win the East, okay? And I'm picking I'm picking Arkansas to win the West next year. They are on a roll.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
So you think Dobbs is the answer at Tennessee?
I think he is. He did not. Now, look, they're still young, and what they showed when they played Missouri is that they're not quite there yet. But this offseason, their offensive line is going to be very experienced. Their defensive line is going to be very experienced, as opposed to last year when none of them had experience. They're going to be really, really good. I could be wrong, but, I mean, who do they have in the East? I still don't respect Missouri as much as people think I should.
I think you've got a sleeping giant in Florida. They just need the right coach.
We don't know who their coach is.
Well, once they get the right coach in there,
if they get the right coach,
if they get a Bob Stoops, if they get somebody of that ilk, that job is a gold mine, and there are players there. You just have to develop.
You're right about that.
So, if you can get a top-notch quarterback in there, they've got the running backs, they've got the linemen, they've got the linebackers, had an outstanding defense. If it weren't for their offense getting in the way, they would have won 4 games.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. New coach is always a little bit questionable. You don't know. I can't predict Florida to win the East until I know who their coach is.
And so the West, back to your point on the West. So you like Arkansas, who has the biggest line in the country.
Maybe here's the thing. They have the biggest line in the country, and that includes the NFL, by the way. Here's the thing. I'm not going to say that they will win the West. They've got a good shot, and they're good enough to win the West. I don't know how good Alabama's going to be. I don't know how good Auburn's going to be. Ole Miss, I think, takes a step down. I think Mississippi State takes a step down if Dak Prescott leaves, and I think he will. So I think it really, honestly, is between Alabama and Arkansas, because Arkansas is just, they're on a roll. They're recruiting well. Brett Bielema knows what he's doing. Quarterback, they're becoming the new Alabama. They're becoming the new Alabama in the sense that they don't need a good quarterback. They just need to run the ball down your stinking throat.
Actually, you know who they look like? Wisconsin of the South.
Well, that would make sense since Brett Bielema came from Wisconsin.
Big lineman. You got a back that you rotate in there. You got 1,000, 1,500-yard back every year. You got a fullback, and you've got a tight end that can catch the ball and is a heck of a blocker. And that's what Arkansas is.
Yeah.
They've become just what Bielema built them out to be. And it'll win. That'll win 9 times out of 10 in a college football game. Great defense and an outstanding offense that's really run control.
This team should be 9-2 right now. The only games they really should have lost were Georgia and Auburn. Those are the only 2 games that they really, and even in the Auburn game, they were, first of all, it was the first game of the season. The Auburn game, they were tied 21 all at half, and Auburn kind of ran away with it. But this is a team that's learned how to win. It took them a while. They couldn't do it for 17 straight games, at least in the SEC. But they did learn how to win, and I'm telling you, this team is on a roll. They're bowl eligible now. We didn't really see that coming. And I think they go into Missouri, and they take it. Again, I'm not showing a lot of respect to Missouri, but, I just think Missouri's overdue. I think they're overdue to lose, or to win, they're overdue to lose. And honestly, Georgia's the better team, and I think that Georgia's destined to win the Eastern Division. But Arkansas, I think Missouri better be careful. I don't think they know what's coming.
Well, again, we are live at Moe's Original Barbecue. We're actually at the Vestavia location this week. And again, for those that are needing Thanksgiving feast, you've got just a small window. Turkey breasts are available, $13 a pound. And the trimmings, if you need those, they've got them. So reach out to Moe's Original Barbecue, Southern Soul Food Revival. If you want to have an event catered, corporate or otherwise, the number for Moe's Original Barbecue at our location is 205-822-2773. You can also go to www.moesoriginalbbq.com. And don't forget, they have great locations in Hoover, the Patton Creek location, Lakeview, over on the south side, and now in Trussville. That's Moe's Original Barbecue, a Southern Soul Food Revival.
We'll be right back.
Get it until the sunrise. Doing 90 and a 65.
Welcome back to Moe's Original Barbecue here in Vestavia Hills, Alabama. You know who's going in 90 and a 65 is Jameis Winston over there at Florida State. I'm just telling you right now, there should have been a penalty called on him. He should have been ejected from the game against Boston College. You can't push a referee out of the way. There's no exceptions. I know the referee was slowing down their no-huddle offense. I understand that. That's fine. But you can't just move the referee out of the way. The ACC comes out and defends him, that just kills me. How do you come out and defend the guy when he clearly extended his arm? This is on tape. It's on tape. Everybody saw it. And it kind of makes you look like you're trying to protect your own here, because Jameis Winston's the only shot that the ACC has at winning a national championship. I'm not saying that's the case, but it kind of makes it look like it. Jimbo Fisher continues to coddle him as well. Nobody's holding this guy accountable. Nobody's holding this guy accountable. He's getting away with everything. Gosh, I mean, every time Jimbo Fisher sees me, he probably pops some pills. Every time. I mean, they're going to be so glad when he's gone. But I'm telling you, he should have been ejected from that game. And honestly, since they didn't do that, he should be suspended at least a half. But no accountability. That's not going to happen. And you know what? He's just going to do whatever he wants, and he's going to keep doing it until somebody holds him accountable. And he's going to take his licks in the NFL.
Or until he hurts somebody to the point where it's going to be like, well, why didn't we stop him earlier? But to your point in the game, yes, they were running a no-huddle offense, but slight change there. They decided to make a substitution. So the official was in the right standing over the ball. And you're not allowed to make any contact with an official.
No contact at all. None.
And if it is intentional, it is an automatic ejection. Well, that looked pretty intentional to most everybody in America. And you have to allow the defense to make their substitution. So Jameis was incorrect. The ACC was incorrect. Florida State, again, incorrect. But what is this anything new with Jameis Winston?
No, it's absolutely not. This is an embarrassment, honestly. He would have pushed the ref on the ground. Like you said earlier, had there not been a lineman there to stop him, he would have pushed the ref on the ground. I mean, he just sat there and took it. I mean, Jameis gets a lot of people fired up. Gets me fired up. You know, what happens if the East wins the SEC? That's not good for the SEC. I'm telling you. Nobody gets in the playoff unless Mississippi State stays at one loss. Maybe State gets in the playoff if, let's say, Alabama wins the division and loses to Missouri or Georgia. But if Missouri wins the Eastern Division and they win the SEC, that's it. Nobody's getting in.
The only way it happens, you have an improbable scenario where somebody like Ohio State loses. It's going to take
could happen.
A miracle loss. Then you do have that scenario where the SEC gets a one-loss Mississippi State team in. But, again, to your point, John, it's a stretch at this point.
Missouri has no shot of getting into the playoff. There's just absolutely they've lost to Georgia 34-0 at home, and they lost to Indiana at home. 31-27. That's fine. I mean, it's a 4-point loss, but still, you can't lose to Indiana at home. Georgia, on the other hand, they have no quality wins. 2 bad losses. South Carolina and Florida. Nah, they're not getting in. And like Max said earlier, I don't think two-loss team is going to get in anyway. But honestly, if Alabama goes, Alabama's got to win the SEC championship. If Mississippi State goes, they've got to win the SEC championship for the hope of the entire SEC. All right, well, let's talk about my SEC picks of the week. Man, I hope my picks are as good as these smoked turkeys are here at Moe's Original Barbecue. Yeah, we're live here at Moe's Original Barbecue. Let's start off with LSU and Texas A&M. LSU goes into College Station. You know, LSU is just going to pound the ball, and Texas A&M is not going to be able to stop them. LSU, pretty close game, 24-20. LSU gets the win. Arkansas goes to Missouri. Arkansas is on fire. They haven't given up a point in 8 quarters, and those are against ranked teams. Arkansas wins in Columbia, 21-13. I'm going to take Clemson over South Carolina. South Carolina's just had a really down season this year. Steve Spurrier's just not quite had it together. I'm taking Clemson 24-16 in Clemson, South Carolina. Georgia hosts Georgia Tech in a rivalry game. I'm taking Georgia 38-31 in a high-scoring game. Louisville hosts Kentucky. I don't think Kentucky's going to go to a bowl. Kentucky's 5-6 right now. Louisville's 8-3. Louisville is ranked 24th in the country. I think Louisville wins this game 31-18. Florida, I'm predicting Florida to go into Florida State. Will Muschamp's last game, Ty's over here laughing at me, man. I'm telling you what, I think it's going to be an upset. I think Florida wins this game 27-23, just like they did in Ron Zook's last game in Tallahassee. It was a big upset. I think Florida's going to go 7-4 and maybe even win a bowl game. Mississippi State, Mississippi State goes to Oxford. Oh, this is hard. I'm going to try and do this. I'm hopeful. I'll be at the game. I'll be screaming my lungs out. But I can't be a homer. I'm going to say Mississippi State in a prediction wins 24-21 over Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss will play a lot better than they did against Arkansas. But Mississippi State has a national championship on the line. Can you go get a trash can for me so I can puke? Anyway.
What's your heart pick on this one? Give me your brain pick. What's your heart pick?
I'm hopeful that Ole Miss will come. Look, they're going to lay everything on the line. They're not going to play like they did at Arkansas. This is a rivalry game, and I'm telling you, it wouldn't be the first time that the team with the worst record has won the game. So both teams are very good. There is an advantage for Ole Miss being at home. Bo Wallace playing in his last game. People rip on Bo Wallace all the time. So, he's an average quarterback. He's a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. He just broke Eli Manning's passing records this weekend. Let's not forget that. So he's had bad games, but when he's on fire, he's on fire. So my overall pick, I'm taking Mississippi State. I have to be a realist, but I do think Ole Miss has a good shot to win this game. That was really tough for me to do. You have no idea. Tennessee is going to go into Vanderbilt, and they're going to crush them 34-10. Tennessee will go to a bowl game. They'll probably go to the Birmingham Bowl. Tennessee is going to win that game 34-10. You don't want to go to the Birmingham Bowl, honestly. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We're here at Moe's Barbecue, Moe's Original Barbecue. Thank you all. It's been a great evening. It's been a lot of fun. See you next week, 9:30.